addiction is not just about a substance, it can also be a behavior, as we are going to be seeing in the different types of addiction. We say that addiction is a psychological painkiller, and addiction is just a fruit, like the fruit of a tree.
Hello and welcome again to another exciting episode. This is your home, Restored TV 254, where we get to tackle issues that deal with the spirit, they deal with your soul, and they deal with your body, because that is the vehicle as you do what you do every other day. We are glad that you're here. To those who have already subscribed, thank you so much. We appreciate you. And to you who is a new subscriber, welcome home. Welcome home. We are glad to have you. And today we will have a conversation that is such a dilemma out there, but trust you me, you will come out a better person than you came in. You'll leave out impacted. I'm your able host, Fresha Wamboinganga, and I'm glad that you're walking with us. And I have an amazing guest. It's good to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Yes, would like to know, who are you?
Wow, a big hello to our viewer. Dr. Jemima Njuguna is my name. I am a medical officer by profession, and I am the CEO of Pema Community Hospital, which is a level 3A located in Utawala, where we offer a variety of clinical services, including diagnostic and treatment. I am also one of the directors of Second Chance Counseling Center, whereby we stand for complete wellness for a stable society. And I am very happy to be here today. A big thank you to my host, Freshia.
You're much welcome. We are glad that you're here, because you'll get to impact us and our viewers as we journey together. And like I've mentioned, we will be having a very impactful episode. And today, our episode will be on addiction. And so we want to help you, by the grace of God, to know how do you overcome the shackles of addiction. And I believe you've heard who she is, yeah? So you're in safe hands. You're in safe hands. You're not with a quack. So you're in safe hands. Daktari, we would like to know, we've mentioned we are tackling addiction. Yes. What is addiction?
Wow, thank you so much, Freshia. Addiction is actually a chronic, progressive, and compulsive disease of the brain. And when I talk about chronic, I mean it is not a one-day event.
Yeah.
We talk about it being progressive because it happens over time. We talk about it being compulsive because you are able to seek a substance or a certain behavior continuously, regardless of its harmful consequences. Yes.
Wow. Many of us, we honestly didn't know that addiction is actually a disease. But thank you for enlightening us. I'm just wondering, you've called it a compulsive behavior. Would you kindly take us through that in a layman's language?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me begin by demonstrating why addiction is actually a disease. Because most people have always thought about addiction as a personal choice, you know. Whereas these people are in those shackles of addiction, they are bound. As you are going to be looking at different substances, like something we call alcohol. In my mother tongue, we call it johi, and we can call it johi. You know,
something that is binding.
Something that is binding.
I see.
And why is it a disease? I may say, just like any other disease, being in the medical world, addiction has an etiology, or what we call a traceable cause. All right.
That is good.
It has a traceable cause, one of which may be genetical. That is, if you have a first degree relative with the history of addiction, you are likely also to get addicted. It's a disease because it has signs and symptoms, as we are going to be seeing. These people get cravings, they get withdrawal symptoms, they get tremors, and many other symptoms, as we are going to see. So it has a pathogenesis. Pathogenesis means a disease outline.
Thank you.
Yes. It is progressive in nature.
All right. That means it's progressive, that it starts from A, but it can get to 100 and be worse.
Exactly. As we are going to be seeing, is that it has 5 stages.
Okay.
And just like we know many diseases, even the likes of cancer, they have like 4 stages. You know, addiction has 5.
All right.
So it is a disease just like any other chronic disease.
Okay.
And then it also has a prognosis, or what we call an outcome. Just like any other disease,
Yeah.
and we hear of certain diseases, they have certain outcomes. Addiction too has a prognosis or a likely outcome, because it can lead you to jail, it can lead you to rehab, to a hospital, and even to death. So that is why addiction is actually a disease. We talked about compulsive. Compulsive means that you are unstoppable. You have lost control over the substance. And it is also good to let you know that addiction is not just about a substance. It can also be a behavior, as you are going to be seeing in the different types of addiction. Yes.
Wow. Daktari, I've heard you mention that addiction has stages.
Yes.
Would you kindly take us through the stages?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. Yes, it has 5 stages, as I said. Stage number 1 being the experimental stage.
Yeah.
Just like the word experiment. This is your first encounter with a substance. You know, our brain works with something we call a reward pathway. And therefore, if you are facing a certain challenge and you experiment by having a sip, maybe you weren't sleeping, but after taking a sip, wow, you feel pleasure, you know, you are likely to continue with that substance. All right? And the experimental stage, as I said, is your first encounter. This can be through the peer pressure, as you hear maybe your colleagues saying that since I began this, my life has become so easy.
Yes.
Because once you come into contact with that substance, be it a drug or a behavior, it gives you the reward. Our body is wired to work through the reward system. So if it gives you pleasure, then you progress to stage 2. What pleasure am I saying? There is something we call euphoria.
Yes.
That is the high effect. Because of the release of something we call dopamine, which is the happy hormone. So if you feel a lot of pleasure after taking the first sip, or after having your first encounter, wow, you move to the next.
So you,
however,
sorry,
it's okay. If you don't get a positive response, or rather you are not rewarded, maybe ukunywe pombe utapike mpaka ujipate kwa hospitali unawekwa drip, ama usikie ni kali sana, basi utaachia hapo. Yes.
Wow, I hear you. So, Daktari, what you're telling us is that the first time you sip alcohol or whatever other substance, that is the first stage.
That is the first stage.
Okay, so
yes,
that is a place someone needs to be sensitive with sensitive. What they are indulging or getting involved with, if I hear you correctly.
Very, very true. Yes.
All right. You can take us through the next stage.
Yeah, the next stage is called the social stage. This is where you take one for the road. So you take it occasionally, maybe when there is a wedding, a rorashio, a get together, and it appears good because you are socializing with friends. And it looks like a good deal because you are interacting well. It will boost your confidence.
Until that level, someone is able to manage whatever it is that they are taking.
Yes. So that is stage 2. Then you have the stage 3, which is the risky use stage. Now it is becoming problematic.
Yes.
At this stage, it is becoming very problematic.
Yes.
Because you take it to manipulate your emotions.
When you say that, Daktari, what do you mean?
I mean, maybe there are people who don't have confidence. Na unataka kwenda kuitisha rorashio, you know. You want to face those people and tell them the rorashio is 2 million. But you can't do that in your normal state. Look at other professionals, like people who work in the morgue or the mortuary. They undergo a lot of traumatic experiences as they handle dead bodies. So they have to manipulate their emotions for them to function. Most of the medics who also work maybe in cancer centers or in very critically ill wards, they undergo a lot of trauma. And somehow they need to manipulate their emotions for them to work. That is why we see that addiction is very high with the medics and even with the police, you know, the security system, because they as well undergo very traumatic work experiences. Yes.
Daktari, for me to be able to drink something that will help me do something that I can't do when I'm normal, I would like to understand, together with our viewers, what does it do to me once I take it? What does it do that seems to have given me confidence or courage?
All right. Thank you so much. Our body and our brain, as I said, our body functions through the brain.
Yes.
We have different systems in the body. The major system is called the central nervous system.
Yeah.
And that is the system that holds the brain and the spinal cord at play. And so the brain is actually the epitome of every other system in the brain. And it is wired to work with something called neurotransmitters, or what we call the brain chemicals. The likes of that is dopamine and something we call serotonin. These are some of the happy hormones. So you find that when you take a substance, they change the brain chemistry and they elevate the happy hormone, which is the dopamine, making you to feel very high, very happy, and to attain a certain feeling called euphoria. And that puts you in another world. You feel like you are simply out of this world. And now you can be able to handle everything until you sober. That is why you find that even in grief, when someone undergoes the death of a loved one, it is too traumatic to handle. Some of them end up going to the bar so that that sadness somehow is done away with until they come back to reality and find out that, oh, this is exactly what happened. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for that, because I was wondering, and I knew it's the same questions my viewers would ask, what is it that it does? And thank you for taking us through that. We had paused at stage 2. Yes. What is the next stage?
Oh, yeah. That it was stage 3 because one was experimental.
Yes.
Then the social stage. Then the other one was the risky use stage. And now we come to number 4, which is called the habitual stage. Habitual stage. Or rather the habitual use. This is where we have people we call DDOs, or the daily drinking officers. So at this point, you are ingesting heavy amounts of this substance. We call this the binge drinkers. These are the people anaanza kukunywa Friday, alafu atarudi Monday. Binge drinking, consuming heavy amounts of alcohol. It becomes very, very problematic because at this stage, they even lose focus and they begin losing control of the substance. And they have to be on this substance day in, day out.
For them to be able to operate.
Yes.
So practically, the substance is the one that is leading you.
Yeah, although we will come to the last stage, which I'm coming to call the compulsive stage, where one is now obsessed with the substance. Lazima watoe lock because they cannot function. Yeah, this is now where it comes like they cannot do anything. Tunaita eye opener. All right. So they have to be high or rather intoxicated for them to function in the office and at work. And when I talk about the substance, I'm also talking about behavior.
Yeah.
Because we are going to be seeing also the different types of addiction. I am talking even about behavior like masturbation, which we are going to be looking at. You find that someone cannot do without masturbating. And even when they are at work, they have to sneak and go to the toilet, masturbate a bit, and come back. So now at this stage is where we call it the compulsive stage. And at this point, they have now begun withdrawing. They have now even begun developing withdrawal symptoms, tremors, and many other changes, as you are going to be seeing. Yes.
Wow, wow. I can only imagine. Wow, what it is. There's something you've mentioned. The starting key, the experimental stage. I'm very keen with that because I might think I just want to sip something and feel good.
Yes.
When will I know that I'm going too far?
Right.
Yes.
Like where we cut the line, right?
Yes, where do we cut the line? Yes.
Wow. First of all, you'll be able to notice that you are totally fixated on a certain substance,
When you say
despite
fixated,
yes,
you mean someone is stuck with that substance?
yes, yes, you feel helpless.
Okay.
You are feeling helpless about not doing without a certain substance, despite the harmful consequences. We will see how addiction can cause mental illnesses, how it can cause other physical ailments, including liver cirrhosis, other issues including asthma and something we call chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. You go to hospital, the doctor is telling you that if you continue this way, your life is shortened, but you still can't stop, regardless of any information. Even if we tell you your liver is eaten up to 80% and the liver is 1, you are still up and about, continuing with engaging with this substance. Number 2, you tend to neglect your physical health. Yeah, you tend to neglect even your personal hygiene, for that matter. And you no longer care, you no longer care about how you look. Somehow you begin becoming a bit unkempt. You then again begin having some bizarre behavior, like isolation. As we say, is that addiction can coexist or can concur with other disorders, the likes of depression. You find yourself disinterested in activities that you used to enjoy. You find yourself extremely sad. You find yourself hopeless and helpless, to an extent of even feeling suicidal. And when you find yourself in such a state, then we can say probably you are getting addicted. Something else, you have an extra need for money, of course, to purchase this substance. And as we are going to be seeing in the different types of addiction, we have something we call gambling. All right. And you find yourself even in loans because you want to get more money to engage in gambling, which is one of the examples of the non-substance type of addiction.
Within the 4 stages, at what point do I start depicting such behaviors?
The risky stage. That's
the
stage 3.
third one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. 1 and 2 are just red flags. But now beginning 3, now it is getting risky and out of control.
I have a viewer there and they're wondering, yani siwezi sip tu kamoja nipate karaha kadogo. How is it possible for you to experiment it and not get to those other stages? Is that possible?
Good question.
Yeah.
Let me say that we say that addiction is a psychological painkiller. And addiction is just a fruit, like the fruit of a tree. We know that a tree has roots, has a stem, and has fruits. So addiction is more of a fruit. Before you get to addiction, there must be root causes. There must be root causes.
Okay.
There must also be other factors which form the stem, which are precipitating factors before you get yourself in addiction. And people get to addiction as a coping mechanism, which is, of course, a very negative one. So if my viewer there could be wondering if they can just sip for fun, then they should ask themselves what is leading them to sipping. Are they trying to seek temporary pleasure, which will again lead to very detrimental issues, where now they'll get shackles and get into a place of prison whereby they cannot be able now to get themselves into. They need to develop positive coping mechanisms.
Yes.
Of course, I know it could be a breakup. Mtu anaweza kuwa umetemwa, it is very painful and you feel like, see, I go out clubbing, you know. But again, engaging yourself in the experimental is likely to give you a reward. And you are likely now to progress and to stage 5, which again, you know, addiction, I would use the example of a con man.
Yeah.
You know, con men are very loving at first sight. You know, they tell you of how you'll get rich, you know, how you'll have such a good life. They trick you out.
Yes, how they'll double your money.
How they'll double your money.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you have nothing. You are reckless. You are in a hospital bed, very distressed, very disturbed. So this is exactly what addiction can do.
Okay.
Begins with a very good high effect, the euphoria, until you get yourself in the obsessive compulsive stage, where now you cannot even do without the substance. And it is a very bad place to get yourself into, because at this point you are now dependent on the drug. And the moment you don't take it, you develop those withdrawal symptoms. Some of them very bad. We call delirium tremens. They can even give you convulsions. And at that stage, now we know that already your body systems are affected by the substance. Yes.
Wow. It seems to be such a problem, and that is what we are dealing with out there. And I'm wondering, if I have a loved one and how do I tell? There are stages you've mentioned. There are sorry, not stages. There are examples you've given of how I can tell if I start withdrawing, if I'm sad sometimes, if I'm trying to even sell, if I feel the need to sell something for me to get money and go drink. You've mentioned those are some of the behaviors that may come up as I journey.
Yeah.
If I have a relative or myself, I'm struggling. I've noticed I'm at that level. What do I do? How do I seek help?
Okay. Wow, thank you so much. First of all is understanding that addiction is actually a disease. The same way we cannot judge a patient with liver failure or kidney disease or diabetes or hypertension or any other chronic disease, because we graded addiction also as a chronic disease. The same way we cannot judge a patient with those other diseases is the same way that we don't need to judge someone struggling with an addiction. So number one is understanding that it is a disease that needs to be worked over, just like the other diseases. Number two, when you notice that they are having those kind of signs and symptoms, it is good to seek professional help.
Yeah.
As we said, is that addiction is just a fruit of so many underlying causes. And they range from environmental, biological, and psychological causes.
Yeah.
And that is why we need to seek professional help, just to know what is the root cause of this problem. So that now this professional, who may be a counselor or even a psychiatrist, as we said, is that sometimes they concur with other mental disorders.
Yeah.
So at some point we may need to involve a psychiatrist, if in case this addiction has led to depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolar disorder, psychosis, or any other mental illness. So we need to seek that professional help for them, so that they can be thoroughly investigated and also treated accordingly. Something else as a relative is something we call core conditions. All right? By core conditions, I mean you should be very empathetic.
Would you tell us what is being empathetic?
Yeah, being empathetic is putting yourself in the world of the clients, in the world view of the client.
Yeah.
Ama kujiweka kwa viatu zake. You know? Na ujue si kujifanya anajifanya.
Yeah.
You know? You know, you cannot go to a ward and ask the patient, why are you vomiting?
Yeah.
It is their disease that is making them to vomit.
Yeah.
So even in addiction, there are signs and symptoms, sio kujifanya. So you should be empathetic and know it is their disease that is causing that.
Yeah.
One of the other core conditions, we call it unconditional positive regard, whereby you are supposed to validate. You know, you find them shaking, having a lot of tremors, you know. It's not your work to judge them. Nini inafanya utetemeke wewe? You know, you should validate and tell them, I can only imagine how you are feeling. Some of them may be struggling with tremors. So sometimes we are asking, nini unatetemeka? You know, and we are going to be seeing that sometimes where stigma comes in is whereby we are judging these people, we are labeling them and stereotyping them, and having a lot of negative bias. In fact, even in the health sector, an addict will go with other conditions. Maybe they have hypoglycemia or low blood sugar. No one cares, because they are like, achana huyo mlevi. So they only see them levy. They don't see a human being. And this is where we are saying we should separate the problem from the patient.
From the patient. And I'm picking something about, we have stigma and misconceptions that are out there towards people who are addicted to drug and substance. What are those things, and how can I be supportive without judging and without aiding or enabling this person to go further into the addiction? Yeah.
Wow, yeah, it's very true, my host, that we have several misconceptions about addiction.
Yeah.
One is like, it's a personal choice. Anyway, ulijitakia, you know, yeah, alijitakia, achana na yeye. But I can say that addiction is not a choice. Initiating the drugs may be a choice.
Yeah.
But the whole other process of getting into addiction is not a personal choice.
I think that's what we don't understand.
Yes.
Because you're the one who started taking the drug, I'll assume it's your choice that you're addicted.
Exactly. Yes. So it is not a personal choice.
Yes.
Another misconception people have is like when you have a happy family, you have money, you cannot get addicted. So addiction is not a respect of persons.
Yeah.
All right. You can be having a very smooth life. But again, maybe you have some genetic component in you that carries the gene of addiction. So due to other factors, as we say, there are so many other factors that are linked, or rather that can predispose you to becoming addicted. All right. So it is not a respecter of persons. Another misconception people mainly have is that once an addict, always an addict.
Yes.
That one is a very discouraging misconception because no matter how much we say that addiction cannot be cured, but it is treatable, we mean that we can treat the symptoms. It doesn't matter than, it doesn't mean that once an addict, always an addict. No, there is hope. Just like any other disease is investigated into the lab and you are given the right treatment, the same can happen in addiction. And on to the other concern about enabling, we can say that most of us in the society are struggling in cutting a line between enabling and helping. When we talk of enabling, we are talking of rescuing. You become a rescue team. Akishikwa na polisi, you go and bail them out. You know? Akifutwa kazi, unamwendea sick off. A forced sick off. In a hospital ili asifutwe. That is enabling a behavior. And you are not helping the patient. However, you can effectively help them by setting clear boundaries. Becoming very firm and setting very clear boundaries. And you are like, I would like to assist you, lakini sita kutoa jela. You know? I would like to assist you, lakini sita kutoa mtaro. You know? You need to create an environment whereby they'll come back to their senses. If you are out there paying for their house rent, na wao wanabaki nyumbani tu akiwatch TV na kukunywa, then you are enabling. But if you can set these clear boundaries and very firm and empathize, you know, there is a difference between sympathy and empathy. Most of us sympathize instead of empathizing, and we make the condition worse. Something else that we can do is to help them to get to a professional, you know, who will be able to look deeply into the root causes of the addiction and probably take them through therapy and other programs. We also have support groups. We have support groups of people who have battled. And as I said, addiction is not a respecter of even professions. You get lawyers, doctors, all kinds of professions struggling with addiction. So when you get into a support group, or when you help them get into a support group of people who are actually undergoing the same challenges, they will be able to encourage each other into recovery. Yes.
Thank you, Daktari. Allow me to take you back a little bit. What are some of the things someone can get addicted with? Because most time, most of us, we know alcohol. Yeah. And I'm wondering, is it only alcohol? I heard there is something like phone addiction. Is also that something that is really there? Is it a reality?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe before I go to that, one of the other misconceptions is that addiction is only to substances. Yes. However, there are two types.
That is also a misconception.
It is also a misconception. But the truth of the matter is, addiction is classified into two. We have substance addiction and non-substance addiction. Substance addiction is what we may call chemical addiction. Yes.
What are some of the chemicals that someone can get addicted?
Yeah. So some of the substances could be marijuana or what we call bangi. We can have alcohol.
Yeah.
We can have miraa.
Okay.
Definitely these drugs are classified into various classes depending on what they do to the body.
Yeah.
We have others which stimulate the central nervous system. You know, they make you feel high. Like alcohol in low doses can be a stimulant. You know?
Yeah.
We have others we call downers or depressants because they depress the central nervous system. Alcohol in very high doses. That is why you find even in the club, people are dancing all over when they are still 2 bottles. But by the time they are getting to 20, they are down. You see? We also have things like heroin.
Yeah.
We have the club drugs. All these are substances.
Okay.
We also have hallucinogens, like the marijuana.
Yeah.
And marijuana actually, from the word hallucinogen, is hallucinations. Hallucinations are false perceptions. And so when one takes marijuana, it alters their perception. And that is why utapata mtu anakimbizana na inzi hapa akicheka. Because their perception is altered.
Yeah.
So wanakimbizana na inzi. So hallucinogens can lead to psychosis. Yeah. Then we also have non-substance addictions.
Yes.
Or what we call behavioral addictions. Here is where we have work addiction. Some people, because they have issues in the family, they want to avoid coming home early. So they will overwork. They will become workaholic. And their bosses are so happy that so and so is really working.
Yeah, he or she is really hardworking.
Because they are leaving job at midnight. By 3 a.m. they are back. That is work addiction. We can have sex addiction. We can have pornography. We can have masturbation. Even shopping addiction. Gambling.
Yeah.
The phone addiction, as you are talking about. Most of us nowadays are just on our phones.
Yeah.
Sometimes you find even in families, everybody has their own corner. Everyone is busy on TikTok to an extent that you cannot even carry out your normal activities without engaging on social media and even without, you are not even focusing on the important things. That is why we are finding that families nowadays, children are growing with a lot of emotional abandonment. Because you've not been with your parent the whole day, and when the parent comes, they are busy on TikTok.
Yeah.
When will you even ever talk to that child? That is why we see even in teenagers and in children, addiction is becoming an area of concern, especially when they go to high school.
Yeah.
Because even during their formative stage, there was no one-on-one conversation because of this issue of phone addiction. Yes.
Wow. Wow. So if I get to a place where, especially the phone addiction, we might even be sick in this room. We need to know. We need to know where we stand. If I can't function or carry out my responsibilities the way I should, I'm just on the phone, TikTok, flopping from one app to the other, that means there is a problem.
There is a problem. You need to seek help.
You've mentioned about children suffering from being abandoned by their parents because they're on phone. What are other things that can what are other effects
Mhm.
that can come out of phone addiction, especially?
Other effects of phone addiction. First of all, even the content you are watching there can become problematic.
Yeah.
Because nowadays we have very many sources of information.
Yeah.
And some of the information that we are actually getting from the phone has it has no background value.
Yes. Yes.
And I can imagine that some of this material may be very debilitating to the mind, especially if you are kind of Googling the diseases, you get some symptoms, you are on Google.
Yeah.
You can even die of a disease that that you actually don't have. Because you see, the fact that you are always on phone and all that, there is something that you are trying to escape from. There is something that you are actually trying to escape from. And that is why you are keeping your mind preoccupied with the phone. So you fail to address the root issue.
Yeah.
And you keep staying on the phone. Definitely, even your interaction with your spouse will get detrimental. Because you are not even having the family sharing time. You are not having those moments as a family to speak about how your day was. You know, so it is a major cause of breakouts and even divorces. As you are seeing, they have become so common.
Yeah.
And many other adverse.
Yeah.
Many other adverse effects.
So someone needs to be very aware, especially with our gadgets, because they can cause a lot of issues.
Yes.
Wow. Thank you so much, Daktari. And I'm wondering if in schools nowadays, the drugs are being consumed at a very high rate and by from a very early age. And I'm wondering what could be the reason why you meet a very young person, someone who is not even an adult yet, and yet they're consuming drugs. Yes.
Wow, yeah, that can be very wide. Because first of all, they may have been brought up in an environment where they see their parents drinking. Wengine wamelelewa kijiji.
Oh, I see.
Wakati wanaona kumi zinatengenezwa huko, you know, everybody is engaging themselves in cheap illicit brews. And you know, mtoto akiona, basi anagrow kujua hivyo ndivyo inafaa kuwa. Yeah, there could be poor parental guidance. Nowadays we have a parenting style that is called permissive, which is a very dysfunctional parenting style, whereby you just allow the child do their own things without proper guidance.
Can you expound more, please?
Yeah. That would
you can give an example.
Yeah. That would mean that a child needs to be guided on what they should do. Lakini wewe uko tu unamuita kadadi o kamami, nikuletee nini, unataka nini. You know, you allow them to parent you, quote unquote, instead of you parenting them.
I see. Yeah. Whatever the child says, that goes.
Yes, that goes. Your aim is more of pleasing the child. And this is the time they need a lot of guidance. We also have neglectful parents who do not care. They are very uninvolved in the lives of their children. Either because themselves have some mental issues, or they have family conflicts, or they have issues at work. They fail to separate the issues with the children. So they do not meet their children's emotional needs. So this child grows with a lot of emotional gaps. And they must look for something to fill that void in future. So if they go to school and they engage with people who are maybe from very affluent backgrounds, and they tell them how their parents drink and how they can also try, they get themselves in the experimental stage, and eventually they will find themselves addicted. We also have the issue of dysfunctional families, which has become very, very common. Very common. We have different kinds of dysfunctionalities in families. We are finding a lot of conflicts. And you know that the parents are triangulating the children into their issues. now that me and you are not communicating and we are spouses, we go through the child. That is what we call triangulating. And so the children are more of rescue. They are more of rescue committees other than being children. Wanawekelewa mizigo ambayo siyo yao. And for them to run away from all these issues and scenarios,
they need to find an escape route.
They need to find an escape route. So this can lead them to addiction. Yes.
Wow. It's good to know that it can be biological causes, environmental causes. It can be all those things that are leading to that. And if I hear you correct, you're telling even parents to get back their power and parent again, because that it can be a cause of your child to be addicted.
Yes.
Wow. Daktari, I'm wondering, what is the statistics on addiction in Kenya?
Okay.
Yes.
I would say that addiction has become a very, 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 very problematic issue and an area of concern to the public health, because we find that almost around 56% of people could be battling addiction.
Wow.
And we are finding even in hospitals, in the health sector, that most of the people who come with other chronic conditions like diabetes and hypertension, they are also battling addiction. And that is why I say that mental health is the background of physical health. And because addiction is a mental health concern, then it is the high time that we address it. Because it is really causing a lot of non-communicable diseases through the issue of something we call psychosomatization. Because you have diseases that begin in the mind, but they manifest physically, as we are going to be seeing.
All right.
And addiction, being a disease of the brain, can cause that. Yes.
Wow, I feel today we are dealing with a very heavy topic, and maybe it's something we are even dealing with at home or wherever else. Yes, and thank you so much, Daktari. This far, we are grateful for the knowledge that you're passing to us. And I hope you're also being impacted as you watch us, and you're getting to just become a different version of yourself, or to even be someone of help to someone else who is struggling out there with what we are discussing today. And kindly allow us to take a break now. We will be right back. Don't touch that dial.